How about now? There we go. All right. It's always something with this computer. Thanks, Robo. So appreciate that. So hey, everybody. I'm Ian. I'm the author of that website. I've got the light panels back up and running. Um, Spent most of the evenings this week doing 3D printing for the kids. They've got an event at their school on Friday where they're 3D printing, or they're going to be selling 3D printed stuff. There's youngest. Hello. So he's doing custom made keychains for people. And the oldest one is using a catapult model that we gave away as a kit card back in October. And is going to set up a table where people have to like fling things with that little catapult into cups. And depending on the size of the cup they get into, they'll win some sort of prize. And so I contacted a whole bunch of creators and makers of designs and said like, hey, my kids are doing this fundraiser for school. Can we, give away your model? And everybody I reached out to was like, absolutely. And I signed up for a couple of Patreon accounts for the month just to make sure I've got like a legit license to actually sell things. For those that didn't respond, folks like Flexi Factory, they just don't answer email. But they do have their Patreon set up. So I got their Patreon, I got the 3D printing world, so that we can do the lightsabers, the extendable lightsabers. So I 3D printed a bunch of these. This one actually got given away on Amish Ace's channel last night. He reached a funding goal for a kids hospital that he's been raising money for, and so the person wants a glow in the dark blue lightsaber blade. So that's printing right now. Tried printing it last night and it failed. There was a slight layer shift, which meant the pieces weren't collapsing and expanding properly, so I had to reprint it throughout the day today. And that one's almost done. But the other one that I started working on, I actually printed a lightsaber. It's Rey's lightsaber from The Force Awakens, I think. I printed it in resin, and then I started painting it. And so this is the end result so far. And so I've done some highlighting, done some like aging and scuffing and things like that on it, and then painted the handle to look like leather. And it's just a couple of shades of brown, and you just kind of like dab it on there really, really thick, and you just kind of blot it off with like a blue paper towel. These blue paper towels are fantastic. And so you just kind of blot it, and then it comes off from there. And then like other little parts where with resin you have to put a lot of support material on there, and sometimes when you break that off, it actually chips the piece. Like up here, it actually chipped the piece. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna make it look like a scuff mark and battle damage and whatever, because I figured lightsabers are probably hitting stuff. So like this part here was a little bit indented or whatever from all the supports, so I just kind of aged it and weathered it and whatever, made it look like that was intentional. So yeah, so that was pretty fun to paint. So I worked on that paint job most of yesterday night while I was on Amish Ace's channel, just hanging out in his chat. I was actually painting that. But yeah, hey RC, good to see you. You have 8 streams on at the same time and have to. All right, well, you don't have to hang out, but I appreciate always when you hang out. Tonight might be a short stream because I'm still really congested and still not feeling great. I'm going to try really hard not to cough on everybody. But thankfully, we're all virtual. But I do need to get better because next Thursday I won't be streaming. I'm actually doing an event live here in Denver, and I got to make sure that I'm healthy for that. So I'm going to be drinking a lot of tea over the next couple of days and just tons of water. I ordered like a whole new thing of Hint water. It wasn't supposed to, like, I have a regular subscription to Hint water that comes in every month, and it wasn't supposed to be until like the week before Christmas. And I'm like, I need it now. Like I literally need to just absolutely overhydrate my body within reason. You don't want to you can actually get water poisoning if you drink too much water. But I gotta flush this out of my system. So for the lightsaber, the multicolor ones that I printed, these were done on the bamboo. These took, I want to say, like 24 hours ish to print 3 of these, including the caps. Just because of all the layers and the color changes and whatever. I did an all black one that's a Sith style lightsaber. And I didn't do any color on that. It's just black PLA. And I think I printed 3 of those in 10 hours. So it varies a lot depending on whether you're doing the multicolor. The blades take anywhere from 4 hours to 10 hours, depending on the quality that you want and the quantity of them. So if I do like one at a time, they're 4 hours. If I do three at a time, it's triple that. I thought about doing one in resin, like doing a blade in resin with the translucent green resin that I have. I thought that might look kind of neat, but that's going to take like 12 hours to do, even as a resin print, just because it's such fine detail. So I may try and increase the layer height on the resin and see if that'll help. But yeah, I mean overall it's not bad. This resin one to print, I want to say the resin print took about 10 to 11 hours just for one, and it printed in two pieces. So prints in two pieces, and I don't know if you can really tell, but I basically had this really light blue. It's called aqua blue, but it's almost an ice blue kind of color. It's like really faint. It's almost a white. I had some of that in there in the resin vat, and so I mixed in a bunch of translucent green, and then I mixed in a little bit of black, and you get kind of this military gray kind of color out of it. And so I printed the lightsaber in that. You can kind of see from the inside of it where I sanded it and whatever. It gets pretty murky, but it was this really cool like semi-translucent gray color, and I printed it, and I was just gonna keep it in that translucent gray. And then I'm like, nah, I'm gonna paint. I want to at least paint the handle. And of course, as soon as I started painting, I'm like, I'm just gonna paint the whole thing. So I painted, some. I mixed up kind of like a darker sort of cobalt blue, and then got the charcoal black in there, and did some silver, and did some highlights on it. So on my lunch break, I was hanging out in Mokomade's channel here on Twitch, and was asking for ideas, and I posted the picture of it. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, it looks like real leather." And I'm like, "It's not. It's just paint." And I said, critique it. Like, what else can I do? And they're like, try some dry brushing and get some dry brushing like on the edges. If it gets knocked around and scuffed around, it's gonna like scrape the metal and scrape the paint off. So make it look like that. And so I did. So I just painted a couple of highlights right on the edges, as if it got scuffed up and whatever. So I like doing this kind of stuff, like the aging techniques and the weathering techniques and things like that. So I'm debating whether to put a little bit of rust or like grime, so you can just really water down black paint, and you can just you do what they call a wash, and then you just grab a rag and you just wipe off whatever you can. And where you end up not being able to wipe it off is going to be in all the little nooks and crannies, but that's where dirt and grime would build up anyway. And so that's kind of how you age something. It's a technique that I learned from Adam Savage on Mythbusters, just from watching some of the one day builds and stuff like that he's got on YouTube. He would do stuff like that, where he would just do like a black paint acrylic wash over like an old Nerf gun or something, and he would just blot, with paper towel, he would just blot the excess off, and it kind of sticks in all the little cracks and the grooves and stuff like that. So, what's up, Knight Rider? Good to see you. So Knight Rider is actually the recipient of the lightsaber that got printed. So this is going to Knight Rider, and the blades are printing right now. I decided to print several blades instead of just a single blade. So I'm gonna I gotta finish that up. The printer keeps stalling for some reason. So I gotta load up the software here real quick and just tell it to resume. It resumes just fine on its own. I don't know why it thinks it's not feeding properly. We'll get that going again. Are you going again? Come on, resume. Why don't you resume? I'll be right back. Almost finished. There's like 20 minutes left on the print. So I decided Knight Rider, when the print failed overnight, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do 3 blades instead of just one, because I do have other saber hilts like this where I want to give people the choice of what color of blade. But when you flick this thing out, you get a pretty good sized blade on here. So the blade's about 30 inches long when it's fully extended out, and then it just kind of collapses back down inside itself. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Pretty fun design. But yeah, Knight Rider is also a streamer here on Twitch, so feel free to go give Knight Rider a follow as well. Thanks for hanging out tonight. I did a little more painting on this one last night, Knight Rider, and then did a little bit more aging techniques on it today over my lunch break. So that one's all ready to go. So this is actually going to be a gift for somebody. They just don't know it. And I've currently got a yellow blade for that because it's Rey's lightsaber from Force Awakens, and she has a yellow blade. So I've got the yellow blade printed up for that one already. So I'm just waiting for the paint to dry a little bit more and to cure a little bit, and then that one will be ready to ship off hopefully as well. That one's a little bit longer than the Obi-Wan built, tiny bit longer, but it was a lot of fun to paint for sure. Hey, Bakari, how's it going? Oh, what's that? I hope that noise isn't what I think it was. It is. Shoot. One of the 3 blades just fell over in the printer, which means I'm going to get a bunch of spaghetti. Dang it. Well, good thing I printed 3 of them, but they're wobbling a little bit, so I'm going to slow that down. Hopefully the other 2 will print all right. And then I can just clean up the spaghetti on that one a little bit. So good times, good times. Hope everybody's doing good. Bakari, good to see you. Bakari, congrats on the job offer. Excited to hear what you're going to do at the new job. So Bakari was on the stream a couple of weeks ago. We chatted about his background and some of the stuff that he was involved in as far as like teaching and training and everything from physics to building equipment that ended up on Mars to getting into tech and teaching robotics and yeah, just all kinds of really interesting stuff. You can go check that out on the YouTube channel where I put all my other VODs. So you can go check that if you like. But Bakari is also a great musician as well, and has a song on Spotify that you can go check out too. So Bakari, if you want to drop a link to your tunes, feel free to do that. I got the bad news from Joyce. So the only bad news I've heard is that we're still in a hiring freeze. No outlook in sight yet for not freezing the hiring. So I don't know when that's actually going to let up, but hopefully it'll be soonish. But yeah, it's too bad that we couldn't get you on the team for sure. Would have been cool to work with you, but I mean, there's going to be opportunity to work together. I mean, that's the beauty of DevRel. So there's always going to be opportunity to work on things. So yeah, so I thought I'd do just kind of a chill evening tonight. If anybody's got questions about interviewing stuff, or if you want to nerd out on 3D printing, I'm happy to do that too. But my voice isn't quite 100% where I want it to be. I'm still pretty congested, but I didn't want to not stream because I've not streamed a bunch over the last couple of weeks. Just we've had family events and stuff going on. Next Thursday, I'm going to be out. I'm doing a talk here in the Denver region on comparing different kinds of APIs. It was a talk I was supposed to give at a conference when I got COVID, so I had to step away from doing that. But I'm actually going to give the talk live in Denver, and it'll probably be a recurring conference talk that I'm going to do in the future. But I got to make sure that my voice and everything is all set for that for next week. So yeah, I thought I'd just kind of hang out tonight and see what everybody's up to. You want to nerd out on 3D printing or other kinds of resin related things I've been doing. I've been making where to go? Making these little resin skulls actually, which are really fun. I didn't mean for this really to look like Deadpool, but it ended up kind of looking like Deadpool, so I decided to keep it. One of the things that we end up with when we do multicolor prints like this is we end up with a lot of waste material when it changes the color in the printer. It has to kind of extrude out a bunch of the old color and wait for the new color to kind of flush into the nozzle before it can resume printing. And so we end up with a lot of this leftover waste. And because it's just little spirals, it takes up a lot of room as well. So one of the things that I ended up doing was buying like a really cheap sandwich maker, like a panini press, and you just put like a sheet of Teflon in there, like it's just this floppy Teflon baking sheet that you put in there, and you put the plastic on that, and you close the lid down, and it melts the plastic down flat. And then I cut all that up into tiny little nuggets, and then I've got a much larger version of this skull mold, and you just put all the little nuggets in there, and then I filled up the rest of it with resin. with just like the regular pourable epoxy resin, like where you mix the two parts half and half and you stir it. Um, then I put like a little bit of color and glitter and whatever in there, and then you pour that over all the little nuggets to fill in all the rest of the space. You let that harden for a day, and they come out beautiful. Like they look really, really neat. I've got a picture of it I can show actually. Let me pull up a picture. A picture here somewhere. There it is. Let me pull this over to my other browser. Let me show this off. Hopefully I can get this working. Let me go over to this mode. And it doesn't want to find my browser. Why doesn't it find my browser? There it is. So this is what it ends up looking like. So we have, so we, just this little sandwich maker or whatever, and it just melts everything down. And then there it is. So here's all the little nuggets that I make out of it. So I just press it down into a flat sheet, and then I cut those into strips, and then I cut those strips into these chunks, and then I just pour these chunks into the little into the mold, and then you just fill up the mold with this pourable resin, and you get these really cool looking effects where you see all the little chunks of all the different melted plastic. So if you know the Spider Gwen model that I've got up here behind me, here's all the pink and the white and the black transition from a lot of the Spider Gwen, and then there's some of the red and the blue in here from Superman. There's more of the pink, white, and purple from, or pink, white, and black from Spider Gwen and things like that. And so all this just waste material that would otherwise just get thrown in the trash in these big curly pieces, might as well reuse it. So I just melt it down, and we have these silicone molds that we just pour the pourable resin into, and the big skull actually came with 4 like little mini skulls, and that's where these little guys come from. Is just the little tiny version of the big skull. These little molds would probably only hold like 1 or 2 nuggets, so I just made just regular pourable resin, mixed in the color and the sparkle and the glitter and whatever, and just mix that up and pour that into the molds. And they kind of neat. So I figured it was a good way to kind of recycle the waste that we would otherwise have from doing these multicolor 3D prints. So yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of how I've been spending my evenings during the day. Still trying to get my work done, working on presentations and talks, and submitting CFPs for next year to try to go to conferences and things like that. And then trying to help people out on LinkedIn and different Slack channels and things like that, trying to get jobs. Been meeting with a couple of mentees on the regular, trying to get them into like, hey, how do I the other blades are failing now too. Dang it. All right, Knight Rider, I'm gonna have to restart that print again and start this whole thing all over again. So hopefully they'll print okay overnight, and hopefully I can still get that thing in the mail for you tomorrow. But yeah, it completely failed. As soon as the one blade falls over, like the rest of them it's like a domino effect. So no big deal. It's literally a couple of cents worth of plastic, so it's not expensive. It's just the time of waiting for this thing to sit there and like do all these little circles in a spiral to print all the different pieces. So anyway. So yeah. So what's going on, everybody? How's everybody else's week going on? I've been, like I said, been helping a lot of mentees lately around like getting projects on the go and how to blog about it. One of the pieces of advice that I came up with that I've talked about on the stream is, if you're looking for a job and you're struggling to get a job, how do you make a project to stand out, or how do you get sort of noticed and things like that? And so I started talking to one of my mentees about this and saying, well, what you need to do is start working on some kind of project, whatever the project is. It doesn't matter what the project is, but you want to start blogging about it, and you want to start writing up, this is the goal of what I'm going to build. Here's my journey. I'm going to blog every couple of days and just kind of bring everybody up to speed on what I'm building. And then in a couple of days, you're going to blog again and say, this is what I've been working on. This is what I've learned. Here's some other articles that I found on how to implement some things. You're not writing it as a how-to guide. You're not writing it as here's how to build this kind of app with, this kind of back end or this kind of front end. Like you're not going to write it as a how-to. You're just writing it as here's my experience building an application in whatever technology stack. And so I mentioned it to this mentee, and I could kind of tell like they weren't really into the advice. It didn't feel like they were like, oh yeah, that's totally what I want to do. They're like, oh, I'm trying to apply for jobs and I'm trying to do take home assignments. And I'm like, yeah, but in between doing all that work, like what are you doing? Because their GitHub was looking a little bit empty. And I'm like, you got to keep coding. Like you gotta stay on top of things. You got to keep your skills sharp. It's going to be their first tech job, so they have to really stand out. And I said, one of the ways that you're going to stand out is by blogging about this and doing this work. Mentioned this over several weeks. I'm like, just start writing this thing. And they got back to me and they're like, okay, well, I started writing this thing and I started writing it as a how-to. I'm like, no, stop. I told you not to build it as a how-to. Just build it as here's my experience building this application. And they kind of hemmed and hawed and kind of procrastinated on it again. Well, we got on the phone like a week ago and they're like, man, you won't believe what I found. There's this person that wanted to get their first job in tech. And so they started like live streaming and they started blogging like, 2 or 3 times a week on what they were building and how they were getting through it and whatever. And the next thing they know, they've got 8,000 followers and like employers are reaching out to them saying, come apply for our jobs. And I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you to do that for weeks now. Like, you just need to get on it. You need to go do the thing. He's like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. It's like, yeah, maybe you should. And so last Monday, I encouraged them like, hey, get started on it. Like, you were given a take home assignment. You didn't get the job. They gave you some feedback. So there's your journey. Just start blogging about, hey, I got some feedback on a take home assignment. I didn't get the job, but here's what I'm going to go change. Here's what I'm going to go learn. Hey, Krusty, thanks for the bits. Appreciate that. And so they decided, okay, I'm going to start. So they wrote up a little blog on, hey, I got some feedback. Here's my journey. Here's what I'm going to do. Then they had to go out of town for something, and so they just blogged about it. And I'm like, whenever you blog, like reach out to people in your network saying, hey, can you go like that thing? You don't have to even go read it. Just go in and like my post, because on LinkedIn, when you like somebody's post, it shows up in your feed for all of your followers to see. So for this mentee of mine, if I go in and I like this post, all of my network sees their post. And anybody else that likes it, their whole network also gets to see that post in their time feed or their timeline. And I'm like, it's a great way to start building up people following you and people noticing you and so on. But they're not making a lot of progress. And so it's kind of disappointing. It's like I can give the advice, it's the whole proverbial lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And it's discouraging as a mentor to have people come by and say, I need help, I don't know what to do. And you give them advice and then you watch them actively not follow that advice. It's like, I can't give you the job. I can't get you through the interview. All I can do is give you the advice to get noticed and get the interviews and progress through things. But it's really discouraging when people want the advice and you try to give them help and then you watch them not follow the advice and you're still meeting with them week after week going, I don't know why I'm not getting a job. It's like, because you're not following the advice I'm giving you. It's like, I've been in around the industry. I know what I'm talking about here. My camera's freezing up again. Of course. Because why not? I'm only trying to live stream. Anyway, Krusty, thanks for the bits. I appreciate that. Krusty, I heard back from Fix'em Dude. He gave me the thumbs up to 3D print that thing that we chatted about on here on Twitch. So I'm gonna throw some ASA in one of the bamboos tonight and start printing that. And Fix'em also thinks that the ASA and the PETG may hold up better than PLA anyway. So I've got yellow PETG and I've got red ASA. So I'm gonna throw that in both of the bamboo printers and try and print off one of each of them and take pictures and send them off to Fix'em Dude and see what he thinks. So, and then if that works out, I'll print up however many more. So if you can send me a whisper and let me know how many to print in each color. I forget if it was 2 or 3 in each color, but let me know and I'll get those printed off and let me know where I send them, or if I'm gonna send them on behalf of the other streamer, send me a message. Let me know. Robo also says a recruiter recommended I make videos showing my thought process or covering part of a project. That's, yeah, again, it's just, here's what I was thinking as I was going through this thing. Here's why I built it the way that I did. You're not building it as a how-to of here's how to build this thing to perfect industry standards, because you're still new at this. You're not going to be very knowledgeable on things, and that's okay. You don't have to be an expert. But you can blog about, this is my journey. This is what I'm learning. This is how I'm doing what I'm doing. Here are the guides that I'm following. Here's some resources that I found. Here's where I got stuck. Here's what I looked for. Here's how I got unstuck. And whether you do a live stream or a video or just blog about it or put it on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're making content and you're putting yourself out there saying, here's what I can do. It's going to get you noticed. Not everybody's comfortable being in front of a camera. Not everybody's comfortable live streaming. That's fine, but you can blog. You can just write words, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like perfect, marketable, search engine optimized. It doesn't have to be any of that. And whether you write it on LinkedIn or whether you write it on a site like medium.com or dev.to, I mean, I would probably put it on dev.to and link to it from LinkedIn, because then it's going to be on dev.to. It'll be discoverable over there. Google and whatever is going to index that site. Google can't really index into LinkedIn posts. And so if you write it on LinkedIn, only people on LinkedIn are going to see it. If you put it on dev.to, then you can link to it from Twitter. You can link to it from LinkedIn. You can link to it from wherever else you're on other social media platforms and say, hey, I got this thing. Can you go read it? Can you like it? Can you share it with your network? I'm trying to get a job here. Like, you have to be aggressive about it to really stand out. If you just apply for jobs and sit back and passively wait, it's a numbers game. It's 100% numbers game. But if you're networking and you're reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm building this thing, can I get some feedback? Can you go check the last commit that I made? I'm a little bit curious how to optimize this one little bit of my code. Don't ask them to code review the entire project, but just say, hey, could you help me optimize this one part? I wish it could be faster. Like, people are happy to chime in and give advice on like small bits of code. But if you just give them like 500 lines or 1,000 lines of code, they're not going to read the whole thing. They're just going to be like, yeah, I think it's fine. But if you say, hey, can you go look at these 10 lines of code? Yeah, I'll give you some attention to look at just those 10 lines of code. But it comes through networking, and it comes through nurturing that network. It's not just, going and saying connect with like 100 people a day on LinkedIn and hope that somehow out of that you're going to get a job. You actually have to talk to these people. You have to send them messages. You have to communicate with them. You have to let them know what you have going on. You have to be a little bit aggressive about it. You have to show some initiative. If you want to be passive about it and just sit back and send out resumes and apply for jobs, you can. It's a tough time of year to apply for jobs. It's a tough time just in general because of the economy and what's going on in the tech industry. It's going to be tougher to get people's attention. But if you're blogging about things and you're networking and you get people to like, what you're writing, just go in and like my thing. Like, you don't have to read it. You don't have to give me any feedback, but if you can just go like it so that your network can see it, that'll help me out. Or if you know somebody that you can introduce me to, that would be really appreciative. And like, be aggressive. Don't be ashamed of asking people for help. That's how you're going to get a job. You have to be able to reach out and ask for help. That's why my whole Twitch stream exists. I'm here to help people out. I'm here to help answer questions. I'm here to help offer that kind of advice. But as a mentor, it's discouraging when I give people that advice and then you actively watch people not follow the advice and then sit back and complain that they're not getting a job. Anyway, I'll stop ranting about it. But my whole point is, if you're looking for a job, start working on a project. Doesn't matter what the project is. You can even keep revamping an existing project that you already have. Just keep building what you've already got. And then as part of that, just blog. This is my journey. This is what I've done over the last couple of days. Here's the GitHub repo. You can go look at the commits. I'm looking for feedback on this little bit of code. If anybody's got some time to go like take a look at this last commit or this branch that I've got, I'm a little bit stuck on something. If anybody knows a good resource I can follow, Stack Overflow, whatever, like put that in the comments. Like, again, it doesn't have to be a YouTube thing. It doesn't have to be a live stream thing, but you're going to get noticed by doing this. You're going to get people talking about it, you're going to get some feedback. And as they write things and they write the, comments and feedback and like things and reshare things, that's where you're going to get noticed. You're going to see that get picked up on other people's news feeds. Now my camera's completely dead. It's not even just paused anymore. But that's how you're going to get noticed. You're going to get a lot more discovery out of that. And then from that, you'll see a lot more people reaching out to you. All right, that camera's completely dead. All right, let me unplug my camera. I'll be right back. Yeah, let's see if this works. Not gonna work. Whoa, kind of. All right, there we go. I don't know why I have so many hardware problems with this PC. It's driving me bonkers. Trying to do all these recordings for work and the camera stops working or my microphone stops working partway through. It's like such a hassle. Anyway, Krusty, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for lurking as well. Yeah, Robo also says it's true. You can just start writing your thoughts. Write out your thoughts. Write out your just this is what I want to build. It doesn't have to be this giant elaborate project. You can say I want to build a project that just has the fundamentals that I talk about on the stream. A little bit of auth, a little bit of database, a little bit of reading or writing from an API if you're doing front end. Then you're not going to do database, but you could read and write some stuff from an API. If you're doing kind of the middleware backend, like read and write an API, put some stuff in a database, do some basic authentication and authorization. Doesn't have to be really elaborate. It doesn't have to look amazing and fantastic. You're just showing the core fundamentals of what it means to be a web developer. And then document your journey. Say, this is what I'm building. These are the steps. Hey, I finished all the auth. May not be absolutely great, but I'm an entry level dev. This is all I know how to do, but I can do this much. Go document that as part of your journey and say, over the next week, I'm going to do session management and I'm going to do authorization. So as I'm logged in, I can figure out like which page am I allowed to see and so on. You just document what you're doing. You're not writing it as a how-to. You're just documenting, this is what I intend to build. This is the next step that I'm going to build. That's all you need to do. And then document the heck out of that. Do that 2 or 3 times a week. And you'll be amazed at how much people are going to start paying attention to that because they see you doing it regularly. You can post it on several social media channels like LinkedIn and Twitter and TikTok and whatever. Like, you're going to get more and more people noticing it. And then from there, you'll get more and more people sort of paying attention and commenting. And then the commenting is going to lead to more eyeballs. And it takes time. Like, you're not going to have 10,000 viewers overnight, but you'll start seeing some traction. And then at that point, companies will start reaching out to you and say, hey, why don't you come apply for this job? Or, hey, we like what you're doing. And then you can start having those conversations with those companies and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find a job. Is there anybody at your company that I can talk to about where to take this project? Do you have any suggestions on what I could build into this project to stand out as a candidate if I apply for a job at your company? Get their feedback. You have to nurture that network. It'll make a big difference on the progress that you make. Hey, 86 Career, good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. See you a lot on Loyal's channel. Robo also says, what would you recommend for balancing time, improving projects with the technologies you know, and adding features with new technologies that you're learning? So the typical advice that I give for entry level devs is don't try to expand your knowledge into new technologies too early. You want more depth than breadth of knowledge. And so what I would probably do is double down on the technologies that you do know and learn that extremely well. Because you can continue, like, let's say you know Ruby on Rails. You can go really, really deep on what Ruby can do and what Rails can do as a framework without having to get into React, without having to go too far into databases and setting up databases and replication, whatever, or even building out APIs. You can just focus on just the Rails internals and how does Rails do this thing, and how do I add this extra feature that's maybe already built into Rails, but how do I activate that and do that as part of my project? And so you're just getting really, really good, like you're getting extra good at the technologies you already know. as opposed to saying, okay, well, I know like this much Rails, so now I want to go learn React. Well, then that's all you're ever going to know about Rails. You're not going to be able to take it any farther than that, or it'll be harder to do that because you're dividing your attention into a newer technology, especially if that technology is crossing languages. Like if you're really good at Ruby on Rails and now suddenly you want to jump into JavaScript and React, that'll be a little bit tougher. If you're already doing front end in JavaScript, then you could probably dabble in some back end in JavaScript, do Node and Express and whatever database engine you want to get into. Um, but I would try to stay within the same language if possible. Again, if you're trying to cross front end to back end, if you're not already working in JavaScript on the back end, it'll be harder to transition. And so I would just double down on the technologies that you already know. But again, which technologies to focus on is going to depend a little bit on the kinds of companies that you're trying to attract the attention of. If they're looking for full stack developers, then yeah, you're going to need to dabble in some front end, and you're going to have to learn some JavaScript and whatever other framework they happen to be using at their job. What I would probably do is look through LinkedIn, find a list of their employees, from there narrow it down to the engineering team, and then from there start looking at their skill set and look through what they claim to be working on at the company and what sort of technologies they use. That'll give you a good idea of like, oh, I see, this engineer is using a lot of Vue. This engineer is also using Vue. Maybe Vue.js is what I want to look at. And then as you're networking with people, you can say, hey, I noticed, some of the engineers on your team are using Vue. Is that a technology that you use at the company? And just get a confirmation of yes or no. If they say, no, not really, we're kind of transitioning away from it, or like, oh yeah, that's something that we're moving our stuff into Vue. We're moving off of Backbone and we're moving it into Vue.js. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go learn more about Vue. And at that point, you can focus your attention a little bit because you're targeting that company. But to just kind of, start building out a project and start working on a project where you're not sure what the impact is going to be on using that project or who's going to be paying attention to that project. It's not that it's a waste of time, but it's not a great use of time. I would instead double down on what you're already trying to learn, and then go from there. And if you find companies that you're really interested in, at that point, then I think you could focus a little bit more on which technologies you want to focus on from there. Just that way, you're not dividing your time too much. As soon as you have like a target company in mind, then you can start spending more time um, on learning other technologies that company is going to need you to know. And then that's how you're going to stand out on that resume. When you build them that resume, you'll highlight the projects using the technologies that they care about. Hey, Creative Bear, good to see you. That's nice, Superman. Yeah, it's huge. It's quite large. It was a mini piece model. The head is a separate piece. The torso, each arm, uh, the waist and shorts. Each leg was a separate piece. The boots were each a separate piece. This set of crystals was one piece. This was a piece. The cape was in three pieces. You can kind of see the seam along here. And basically used Bondo. I just bought a tube of carb Bondo and I glooped the whole thing together with gloop. And then I glooped the cape, but there were still some gaps because 3D prints are never like perfect every time. So I just filled in the cracks with Bondo, sanded it down, gave it a little coat of paint. And yeah, it's 3D printed. The whole thing's 3D printed. You can. So I even did in the bamboo slicer. I did his head, and you can kind of see that I made like blue irises and pupils as well. So that came through pretty nice. So yeah, this is a gift for a friend. I'm taking it to the kids thing at the school this weekend. That and the Spider Gwen. I'm gonna take both of those and just set them up on a table and show people like this is the kind of stuff that you can do with 3D printing now. But yeah, I also do things like multicolor lightsabers, with the extendable blades. I don't know if Knight Rider is still in the chat, but Knight Rider actually won this one on Amish Aces giveaway last night. I'm going to be printing out a saber blade that's in a pale white, glow in the dark blue. The blades actually just failed on the Bamboo, so I need to restart that and print that overnight. And then this lightsaber I did in resin and then painted. So this one's also going to be a gift for somebody. And so I went through and did some aging techniques and some battle scuffs and things like that on it. But this is Rey's lightsaber from The Force Awakens, I think. She's got a yellow blade, so I printed that blade in yellow. So that's going to be a gift for somebody. I imagine I'm going to have a bunch of people ask about the Superman and the Spider-Gwen. Are they for sale? Kind of thing. And I may put a price tag on the Spider-Gwen if somebody really, really wants to buy it. But it'll be spendy. But or I could just reprint the stuff for the holidays. So Stephen Poole level print quality. Oh, I appreciate that. That's a good compliment for sure. Joe H2MD, thanks for dropping by. I want to offer promotion of your channel. Viewers, nope, you can go away. All right, let's figure out how to ban somebody. How do we ban somebody in chat? You can go away. All right. Not very often I have to ban somebody in my chat, but sometimes it's worth it. Let's see. How do I just straight up delete their comment? That would be even better. Okay, apparently I need to go into mod view. And let's see. Of course, now I can't see the chat because it won't load old messages in there. Oh, but I can ban them from there. There we go. All right, banned. Sweet. All right, I took out their old message too. So, bye-bye. Second person ever that I've had to ban on my channel. First person was just a jerk. This person was just a spammer. So, good times, good times. Hope everybody else is doing well. I'm still getting over COVID, so I'm still like really congested, and woke up this morning with a really bad headache again, and really congested. But hopefully get better over the weekend. My father-in-law's coming to visit too, so got gonna have house guest. Thankfully, we don't have a guest room in our house. We kind of did that on purpose. We turned our guest room into a craft room / office for my wife, and so oh shucks, we can't have people stay overnight. But it's good. It gives them their own space and say like, hey, it's time to go back to the hotel. It's like, all right, we'll leave. I mean, in a very polite way, but we kind of, we already let him know ahead of time, like, hey, we're not feeling 100%. So, it'll be nice to have him come visit. But yeah, we kind of did that on purpose in our house. Of like, we don't have to have overnight guests. Gives them their own space that they can go back to. They can get up when they want to, and we don't have to worry about people waking up at odd hours and you know using the bathrooms and showers and all that kind of stuff. They've got their own space. We've got our own space. You can come over whenever you wake up, want to come over and visit. Works out great that way. We've been doing that for several years now. It's a fantastic system. So, let's see what else. What else is going on? So yeah, lots of 3D printing this week. And then yeah, just lots of mentoring. I gave a talk at the school where I taught. I gave a talk there last Friday about Postman. Love doing that workshop. Gave the same workshop on Wednesday for a group up in Canada. Thankfully, that one was remote. I was supposed to do it the previous Wednesday, but I was still coughing quite a lot with COVID. So I gave that talk this week. And it's nice just networking with people and having the connections come in from LinkedIn and staying in contact with people and kind of nurturing those sorts of relationships too, of like, hey, I heard you give this talk. It's like, oh cool, let's keep talking about things and how else can I help you, with your own projects and stuff like that. So am I mentoring students from Turing? Yeah, I am. Yep. 86 Carrera asks, any advice for someone who's been at their current position for 24 years, but the technical track is kind of a dead end for people that want to continue on the design track? I work in safety, critical, embedded avionics. Ooh, sweet. First of all, congrats on being in the same job for 24 years. That's amazing. It's pretty unheard of in the tech industry for sure. You're usually changing your job every year, 2 years, 3 years. But to stay at a single company for that long is, it's huge. If you feel like you're hitting a dead end, though, the first thing you need to do is talk with your management about it. As a previous manager, the worst thing for me is for you to walk in and be like, "Here's my resignation," and I have no idea that it's coming. Like you as an employee shouldn't care about their feelings because they don't care about yours if they're going to let you go. There's like, "Hey, today's your last day," or "Hey, we're going to let you go in the next round of layoffs in a couple of weeks." Like, you get no notice and no cares, right? There's like, "Today's your last day. Bye-bye." So technically, legally, you can do the same thing. You can just quit with no notice. But from a manager's point of view, I want to try to retain you if possible, um, because you have a lot of sort of inherent knowledge. So if I can retain you on the team, that's better for me. It's better for the team. It's better for morale. It's better for the company overall. We don't lose a good employee, especially someone that's been there for 24 years. Um, so if you like the company, if you want to stay at the company, then I would start with communicating with your manager and say, "This is what I want to be doing." Come up with a game plan of, and this might be something where you sit down and you think about it for a little while and then you go talk to them and say, "Hey, can we just have a one-on-one just to check in? I want to run some ideas by you." If you just say like, "Hey, have you got some time to meet Friday afternoon?" You're going to freak them out. They're going to think you're quitting. But if you say like, "Hey, if you got some time, I've got some ideas that I want to run past you, about the type of work that I do. If you've got some time where we can sit down for like an hour, and then, either present your ideas or say, I'd like to brainstorm some ideas on how I can continue to progress at the company. I like it here. I've been here a long time. I want to stay here, but I kind of feel like I'm hitting a wall with what I'm doing, and I really want to progress, in what I'm doing." It may be that the current track that you're on is a dead end. There may be other tracks that you can go in. Um, maybe not. As your manager, it's my job to find those opportunities for you. It's my job to keep you happy and to keep you retained at the company if possible, because it's expensive to hire somebody new. You're going to leave, you're going to take 24 years of knowledge with you. I've got to train somebody brand new and they're not going to have any of that knowledge. Even if you write all that stuff down, you're not going to write 100% of your knowledge down before you leave. No matter how much kind of notice period you give them, you're going to be walking away with knowledge that they're going to lose. So it's to their advantage to try to keep you as an employee. Now, if you feel that you're hitting kind of a dead end salary wise or compensation wise, then again, you can have that discussion with them as well. But I think it starts with good communication. It shows maturity on your part of, you like the company and you want to communicate about it, and find out from your manager, like, what can we do for me to work on A, B, and C? I want to kind of transition my role, or I want to add these other responsibilities, or I want to take the next step. Like, what's next? And if it's really a dead end, and they're like, there is no other role beyond this, then you have to make the choice of, okay, am I okay with staying here and just doing the same old thing for more years, or do I want to go find another job and actually go work somewhere else? But at that point now, as a manager, I'm not going to be surprised if you resign, because I've told you that there's nowhere to go from here. But if there is something extra that we can do, some other responsibility, some other kind of work that you can take on, whether you're getting into more of the technical leadership side of things, not the people management, not the people manager. Like, you're not going to become a manager of engineering or a director of engineering, but you could go down like deeper, like staff level architect, or principal engineer kind of roles, where you're taking on more responsibility, where it's more of a leadership, it's less hands on, and you're going to take more of a visionary uh, sort of uh, sort of role. Again, depending on what's available at the company. If those kinds of roles are not available at the company, then again, you're gonna have to make a choice of, do I stay anyway, or is it time to look for something else? Um, some people want to stay because they hate interviewing and they don't want to have to go through leak code, grinding and things like that. So I get why people want to stay at a job and not go back through an interview. But I think there's some validity in, having a fresh start and changing things up too. But it'll depend on your goals overall. I would say it starts with the communication though. Have a chat with your manager, brainstorm a little bit, but during that brainstorm session, talk to them about timeline and say, I'd like to transition in, like, if you do come up with some ideas and say, I'd like to make this transition over 6 months. What can we do over 6 months? Like, it's not like 6 months from now, I'm just going to like stop coming to this team and start going to another team. Like, can I start shadowing that other team and work there like once every 2 weeks? And then, in a month, maybe I'll do it like every week. And then in another month, I'll do like 2 days a week and then 3 days a week. And then, eventually you're like gradually transitioning away from your team as you're transitioning toward this other team, to where then it flips the other way and say, I'm going to go work on that other team now most of the time. And I'll come back and I'll do like 1 day every 2 weeks for this team if there's some other knowledge that I can share. Or just know that even though I'm going to be on this other team, I can always come back. Like, we can schedule some time if you need me to help pass on some knowledge, where you're not actually doing the work. Like, they're not going to call you up and say, hey, 86 Carrera, we're really stuck on this thing. Can you come fix it? You can say, no, but I'll come help somebody else fix it. I'll let them do it and I'll just explain to them what to do and why, but I'm not actually going to be the one to fix it. You have to make sure that you set those boundaries. Otherwise, you're never going to fully transition over to that other team. But if you just say, like, I'm going to come in and I'll train the other people on the team to do what I do. Again, it shows the maturity, the willingness to help and things like that. But you're going to have to make sure that your new manager, if you have if it's not the same manager, that they're okay with you doing that from time to time, not as an all the time kind of thing, but just say, like, I'll make myself available like every 2 weeks, every second Friday afternoon or something like that. If you want me to come sit in with the team and like share any knowledge that's missing, I'm happy to do that. Just make sure your new manager is cool with it. But I think it shows maturity. It shows a willingness to kind of work and continue to be part of the team. And you're retaining your knowledge, you're retaining your position, you're maybe stepping into new responsibilities. And if you do leave that job, that's what other companies are really looking for, is that you continue to progress in your responsibilities. And then you can tell the story of, I reached a certain limit with this role. And so I transitioned, I did a lateral move into this other role. And I took on additional new responsibilities and handed off my old knowledge while I learned, new things. From a company perspective, that shows a lot of maturity and a lot of progression in that skill. So that if you do ever get to a point where it's like, oh, you know what, I thought I wanted to do this other thing, turns out it's not great. Now there's no room for me back on that other team. Now I do have to leave the company or whatever. Wherever you are in your career at that point, if you decide, you know what, it's time to actually change jobs and like go somewhere else, that other company, like anywhere else you apply, they're going to see that transition. They're going to see that you're continuing to progress in your skill, that you're not just doing the same thing, over the past decade and you haven't learned anything new. Because especially when you've been in the industry as long as I have, I've only got like an extra 2.5 years on you. But when we've been in the industry this long, they want to make sure that we're progressing, because we're not going to do things the same way that we did a decade ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The way I wrote code 25, 26 years ago when I started my career is not the same way I write code today. We use completely different tools, different languages, different structures of things. There's a very different way of doing things, and companies want to know that you're progressing in that skill. So being able to show them that you're taking on those new functionalities will make a big difference if you do decide it's time to apply for other jobs. So that would be my advice there. I would start with just chatting with your manager about it. Whether you come up with ideas on, like, I want to be working on these things, is there opportunity on that other team? Um, or, just say, I've got some ideas. I'd also like to brainstorm with you on some ideas. Then you can say, these are the things I've got in mind. Can you help me brainstorm on other ideas? And then we can try to decide together, like, this is where I want to take my career. How can you make that happen within the company? And can we do that over 6 months? Then you're putting the work on them to help you with that. That's their job as your manager, is to make those opportunities available. And if they refuse, or they say, like, oh, I can't do that, then you can say, okay, well, can you talk to your manager about making this happen? And if they kind of hem and haw and hesitate, then that's a sign of a bad manager. They should be willing to let you move around, especially when you've been at the company that long. They should be happy to retain you as an employee. And if they don't, and if they, they keep giving you excuses, or they don't commit to a timeline, or they say they commit to a timeline and you don't see that actually happening, then if you show up with a resignation letter, it's not a surprise to them, and say, hey, you know what? We had this plan. It didn't work out that way. So I'm out of here. Here's my resignation. They're still going to be disappointed because you're still walking away with a lot of domain knowledge, but they can't be surprised by it because they had the opportunity to give you those, those other opportunities within the company, or to try to make those things happen. They didn't. So yeah, of course they're going to lose you as an employee, but it's not a surprise anymore. So that would be my advice. I know it was kind of long-winded, but hopefully that'll help you out with some ideas. Hey, Goose Smells, good to see you. You're actually touching on something I did. I did this today. Oh, sweet. Love to hear, what happened, and what your experience was, and what kind of feedback you got from management over that kind of thing. Robo also says, so I've heard some different advice on what to focus on for getting my first dev job. Like 70% of my time should be project building versus majority of my time should be networking over anything else. My gut is telling me to focus on projects and then networking. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I got thoughts. Everybody that you talk to is going to have thoughts, and they're going to have different ideas on how you should spend your time. It's really up to you for how you can actually spend your time. In my experience, networking is going to get you a job faster than just, shotgunning resumes out there and hoping that somebody notices. The kinds of projects that you build, the quality of the projects that you build, and who you're targeting as a company with the projects that you build will make a big difference. But you have to network about the projects that you're building. If you're just building projects and you're blogging about it, you'll get some amount of discovery. But while you're building those projects, I think you still need to continue to build your network and nurture that network and say, hey, I'm working on this thing. If you want to check it out, I could use a code review on this little bit of code. Get people actively checking your code. Get people actively looking through what you're building and say, hey, I added this other thing to my portfolio. If you got 5 minutes to check it out, I'd love any feedback. Just say like, hey, I'm trying to figure out the positioning of this thing on the screen. Like, if you got a minute to just eyeball it and give me some advice. Ask 5 different people for advice. You'll probably get 5 different answers, but then you can decide like, hey, I had all this different advice on these things. This is what I decided to do. Now you've got another whole blog post you could write. Where you can say like, I had this advice from some people that have been mentoring me that I've been asking for help. They all had really fantastic ideas, and this is what I ended up doing. And so that way people know that when you ask for their feedback, you're not just be like, uh, just saying, oh, I'm asking 5 people for the sake of asking 5 people, but really I'm only ever going to listen to this one person and do everything the way that they tell me to. People want to know that their input is valued. And so if they ask, or if they offer some kind of help, like make sure that you're thanking them for their time, be gracious about it, and say, I appreciate that you're, willing to give me some ideas here. This is what I ended up building. This is what I ended up changing or doing with that. But I appreciate your feedback. So even if you don't implement their feedback, you're still letting them know that you appreciated their input, and so on. So the next time you ask them, they're more likely to respond. But if you're like, oh, I didn't like that answer, and so I did this instead, it feels like a bit of a slap. It's like, oh yeah, I heard your advice, but meh, I went with this other thing instead. Um, but if you're thankful to them and grateful to them, and be like, hey, I really appreciate the time that you spent. I considered that option. I also heard, this other advice from this other person that I asked the same question to. And I decided for this round, I was going to implement what they did, but I'd love to stay in touch and have you, keep looking at my code, and so on. Like, just, you have to keep nurturing that thing. So as far as splitting your time, I can't really say like, oh, 50% of your time is this and 50% of your time is that, or 70-30 or 60-40. Like, it's going to vary depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. If this is your first tech job, I would say the projects that you build are definitely going to be important, but they have to be targeted to companies who you're already in communication with, that that you're asking for help. And so, gosh, to try to put timing on it, I would say like spend your mornings doing networking, reaching out to people, responding to messages. Spend the rest of your day working on project work. So depending on how much time you want to spend doing networking, then the rest of your day is project work. If you spend half the day networking, half the day coding, then it's 50-50 that day. Maybe the next day it'll be 30% networking, 70% code. Maybe the next day it'll be 70% networking and a whole bunch of interviews and phone calls, and maybe you don't get any code done. It's going to vary day to day. So I wouldn't say like make a very strict calendar about it. But I think you could say like, I'm just going to network in the morning until I feel like I'm sort of done with my networking for the day. And then I'm going to switch over to coding. Or you know what, today I don't feel like people. So I'm just going to code all day long. That's okay too. You're the one that has to make that call. So you're the one that has to decide on, what's that process going to look like. I think if you can put it in a Google Calendar, it can be helpful. Even if you say like, I'm going to network for an hour every morning. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have breakfast, I'm going to go walk the neighborhood, get some fresh air or whatever, and then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to network for an hour. I'm going to reach out to people, say, hey, this is some stuff that I wrote yesterday. Could you go look at this one commit message and, give me any feedback about it? And then from there, decide how you want to spend the rest of your day, how you want to split that up if you get interviews or if you're going to code or whatever. Then it's on you. You can make that determination. But don't hold yourself so strict to that hour that if the hour runs out and you're like, oh shoot, I don't feel like I'm done with networking, then keep networking. If you get 20 minutes into networking and you block off an hour and you're like, oh, I'm kind of done with people today, that's okay too. It's meant to be a guideline, not a strict rule, but just you've got that time reserved for some amount of networking. But be relentless about asking people for introductions and say, hey, who can you introduce me to over the next 2 days? I'm looking for a job, could really use some networking help. I'm trying to build up my network. I'm trying to reach out to people like you, trying to get advice on things. I want to be a really strong candidate when I'm applying for these jobs. If you got like 5 minutes, like what would your top piece of advice be on technical challenges? What would your top interview advice be on, formatting a resume? Can I send you my resume? Can you just give me like a 5-minute take? Like just look over it for 5 minutes. Give me 2 things you would change and 2 things you really like. Just do that on a regular basis. Just every morning, you're going to get up and you're going to ask people for feedback and ideas, and then figure out how do you want to prioritize those ideas for the day. Do they all seem like garbage and you don't want to do any of them? Do they all seem really good and you kind of want to do some like A/B testing and be like, okay, well, I'll try this with this resume and I'll try this with this other resume, and I'm going to send them both off to different jobs and see if I get traction. If I get traction on one and not the other, then I'm going to keep doing that thing and maybe less of this other thing. Or maybe just the company that I sent this other one to, they just weren't looking at resumes that day. So don't just send them off to one company and try to make a decision. Like send them off to like a couple of companies and see what kind of traction you get and be like, oh, you know what? When I put this block over that block on my resume, I get more phone calls. Great. Keep doing that. Ultimately, you're the one that's making the decision on sort of steering that boat. And so I'm not going to tell you like 90 minutes a day for this and 90 minutes a day for that, and then spend the rest of your day doing blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's really going to be up to you. As you network, as you apply for jobs, you'll get phone calls. So schedule those phone calls. I would say try to schedule them between when you expect to do your networking and when you want to code. So you can tell people like, I'm available for interviews between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on, like any day of the week. That gives them, I mean, that's kind of a small window. It's only a 3-hour window, but you can say like, just for that initial phone call, I'm available late mornings, early afternoons. Otherwise I'm going to be coding or I'm going to be doing such and such. Or you can just say like, I'm available anytime after 10 a.m. But until 10 a.m., I'm doing my networking, and your head's down and you're nurturing that network, because that's going to get you a job faster. Getting the referrals, getting people talking about you within their companies, sharing your blog posts and the stuff that you're writing up. And then the rest of your day, you're going to figure out, okay, what am I going to work on today? Is today going to be a day where I blog? Is today going to be a day where I write some code? Or go learn some new technology if you really want to go that route. But the rest of the day is yours at that point. And so I would say block off a little bit of time for networking, block off a little bit of time for how you want to plan the rest of your day based on the networking that you've done. And then use that hour to plan out what the rest of your day is going to be. I need a little bit of time for phone calls. I need a little bit of time for some code. I do want to write that blog post by the end of the day. Give yourself a deadline. Say, I want to write that thing by 4 o'clock. So I need to start writing it by 2. Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 2 p.m., whatever I'm doing. Let myself know, like, hey, it's 2 o'clock. You said you were going to write that blog post. On average, it's taking me 2 hours to write a blog post. So I'm going to start on it. If it takes you a little longer than 2 hours and you don't post the thing until 5, that's fine. Like, it doesn't have to be a super rigid schedule, but you're giving yourself kind of that discipline of, this is how I'm going to spend my day. I think that'll help you out. This will also help with my networking too. I've been doing a mix of both. You're giving me ideas on how to do it more effectively. You have to be relentless about it. You have to be aggressive, but not a pest, if that makes sense. Like, you have to put yourself out there and you have to be willing to be vulnerable and be public about things and just be like, I'm looking for a job. Who can you introduce me to today? Like, can you give me the names of 2 people that I can reach out to today about my job hunt? Like, who can you introduce me to? Can you find 2 people in your network that I can reach out to and say, hey, I chatted with Ian. Ian gave me your LinkedIn profile, and so I'm connecting with you. I'd like to chat about my job direction, my career direction. If you've got 5 minutes for a phone call or, whatever, I've got 2 specific questions I'd like to ask about your company. And that's the whole networking thing, where you're like kind of hooking them in a little bit in that introduction message, because you've only got 300 bytes to say, hi, I got your name from Ian, and I've got 2 specific questions about your company. If you got 5 minutes for a phone call, wait for them to connect. If they connect, then send them those questions and be like, here's my availability. I'm available anytime after 10 a.m., whatever time zone you're in. And then that way they know when they can schedule a call with you, right? But you're giving yourself that discipline of like, no, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to make breakfast and I've got until 10 a.m. to do my networking. And that's just my time to like build and foster that network. And again, if it goes longer than that, it goes longer than that. If you decide you don't want a people today, that's okay. Just don't network today. Just jump right into the planning of how am I going to spend the rest of my day? If I'm not networking and I'm not going to look at LinkedIn today, what am I going to do today? Spend an hour or less of how you're going to plan out the rest of your day. Shouldn't take an hour, but sometimes you're going to fumble around a little bit on like, should I do a little bit of this? Should I do a little bit of that? What should I look into? Block off the time. If you don't need all that time, that's fine. Give yourself time back to work on other things or take a break. Whatever it needs to be for you. But you're the one who's monitoring your own mental and physical health, your own energy level. So you're the one that's going to have to decide day by day on how to spend your time. Madeline asked if I'm doing resume reviews. Yeah, if you want to send it over, I will do a resume review for you. I think I've got 1 or 2 other ones queued up. So if you want to send it over, you can go check out the link over here. Send me over a PDF and then send another message in chat that you've sent it, and I'll go look it up in email, and I can do a resume review on the stream. Sure. Going back to Eggy Smalls. So Eggy Smalls said that some of the advice I gave you earlier about communicating with manager was something that they had done. So I met with 2 of my managers. One of them was my manager, and another one is a different engineering manager. I signaled to my manager that I don't see myself doing non-engineering work for the next 2 to 3 months. Also told the engineering manager that I've been wanting to do more engineering work. To say the least, I'm getting people to talk about my investment in engineering skill set. Should I find a new opportunity, it certainly won't be a surprise. So you met with your manager and another manager. So you're not currently in an engineering role. So I'm trying to like put the pieces together from your message. So you're doing non-engineering work and you had a chat with your manager saying, I want to transition out of this in 2 to 3 months. And you talked to an engineering manager saying, I want to be doing engineering over the next 2 to 3 months. Those managers need to talk. Your manager needs to figure out, how do we retain you as an employee within the company, but can we transition you over into the other role? 2 to 3 months is pretty aggressive though. I would probably stretch that up to 6 months. If you're really unhappy doing what you're doing, then you can be more aggressive and say, like, I really want to transition over to that in 3 months. But to transition into an engineering role when you're not currently doing engineering, are you going to be able to learn everything that other team needs you to do in 2 to 3 months? That would be a question there. So I'm not exactly sure what your background is. I don't recall off the top of my head what your background is, Eggy Smalls. But if you can give me some more context in chat, I can maybe direct that advice a little bit more. If you don't know any engineering and you want to transition into that in 2 or 3 months, that might be too aggressive. but I like that you were actually chatting with your manager as well as another manager. I would generally just start with your own manager and try to get their feedback and say, hey, I want to be doing something else. I want to transition to some other role in the company. Can we make that happen over the next 6 months? What would that look like? Let's build out a timeline. When can we set checkpoints to make sure that we're on time, like that the timing is tracking well to get where I want to be in 6 months? What's that going to look like? And then how do we set that in a calendar where we can check in and say, what's the progress towards this? And again, that timeline may shift a little bit. It might end up being faster. It might end up being a tiny bit slower. But if you notice that they're constantly dragging it out and say, hey, you know what? It's been 4 months. We said I wanted to do this within 6 months. It's been 4 months and there's been very little progress. Like, how are we going to speed this up? Because I wanted to be doing this other thing within another 2 months, but it feels like it's another 4 or 5 months away. What can we do? Because I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. I'd really rather be doing this other thing. You said that you would help me with this. And again, you have to advocate for yourself because nobody else will. It's their job as the engineering manager to advocate for you, but you know, they're going to try to keep you on their team. If you're a good employee and they like you, they're going to want to keep you on their team. They're not going to want to lose a good employee on their team. But if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's your responsibility to advocate for that for yourself and say, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. I want to be doing this other thing. What can we do? What's the timeline? Let's brainstorm. Let's put it on a calendar that we can check in and make sure that it's happening within that time frame. So you're not going to get so legalistic about it that you're like drawing out a contract or whatever, and that there's like consequences if they don't meet the deadline or anything like that. Um, but if you notice that they're constantly dragging their feet, then you can say like, hey, like this isn't happening the way that we talked about months ago. Is there someone else that I can talk to about making this kind of transition? Or, there's this other engineering manager that we could go talk to. You can always have that conversation with that other manager on the side and say, what can I be learning in order to transition over to your team within a certain timeline? You can find out from them. That could be part of the brainstorming that you do with your manager. Um, but all of those are good ideas. I like that you're advocating for yourself. I think 2 to 3 months might be aggressive though if you don't have that background. But if you want to give me a little more context in chat, let me know. Hey Kisu, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time for sure. Yeah, it's good to have you back in chat. Hope you're doing well. I'm actually getting over COVID myself, so I'm still really congested and stuffed up. But hope you're doing well. And then just looking back on chat, so Madeline's saying that's what I do. First thing in the morning, I just try to get my time spent on LinkedIn. If I spend too much time on there, it gets a bit depressing. Yep, it can. So again, that's why you have to like really limit. Like, I'm only going to do this for an hour. If it goes a little bit over that, that's okay. If it's good progress, then let it go over that hour. But if it feels like it's just a grind and I'm just doing the same thing and I'm just copying and pasting the same message to 10 new people every day, like meh, then don't do it for a day. Take a day off of the networking side of it and just go straight into your planning of how am I going to spend the rest of my day. Cool. Let me go check my email real quick and see if we have any resumes come in. One thing that I didn't do tonight was update our diversity and tech fundraiser, but it will be a couple of dollars more than that, just on ads and the bits and so on that were cheered over the last couple of streams. Appreciate everybody with the bits and the subs and so on. That's all going into the diversity and tech fundraiser. I do have a group targeted. It's called Girls Dream Code. They're based in Minnesota, and we're going to give them all this money, and then I'm matching all of that money as well. We'll be giving that out to them at the end of the month. I haven't contacted them to let them know yet, so it'll be a end of year surprise for them. And thank you, Roboso, for the hydrate. I did say I was going to drink a lot more water over the next week. Why is my email not loading? All right, there's that one. Let's go over to that one. See if there's any resumes come in. All right, no new resumes come in. But yeah, if you want to send over a resume, I'm happy to do a resume review. Doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, that's the point of getting feedback. So just send over what you got. Just print it as a PDF, email it over on this form. It'll ask a couple of checkboxes on there that you're either masking your contact information, because I really prefer that you don't put your real email and phone number on there, because this is shared on the internet. So there is a checkbox saying that what is on my resume I'm okay with showing online. And then don't worry about the $50, like if you want a private review kind of thing. I do charge money if you want a private video review. Um, and but all that money goes into the diversity and tech fundraiser, and then I match that money anyway. So it's not like it's going in my pocket anyway. You're really contributing to diversity and tech by asking for a private review. And the private review, I'll usually like schedule a Zoom call with you, and I'll do it over my lunch break or something like that. And we'll just hop on a call for a little bit, and I'll give you my thoughts and my feedback. Or if we can't coordinate on a time, if you're in a completely different time zone, I'll just record it kind of offline, and I'll just send you a link to the video. So it'll be less interactive that way, but happy to do it that way if you want a private review. My caveat on that is if you were looking for your first job in tech, then I don't charge that $50. But if you were currently in the tech industry and you're looking for a new job and you have the income, then I do ask for that $50, but it's going into the fundraiser. So yeah, I'll keep the email open just in case I see any new resumes come in. See, we've been going for about an hour and a half. I think at most I'm going to go another hour, because again, I gotta kind of protect my voice and sinuses and all that kind of stuff, and I gotta restart that lightsaber print tonight before I go to bed. So critique a job post. Oh, I love critiquing job posts. All right, RoboOso, if you have a link for a job post you want me to critique, feel free to drop that in chat and I'll take a look. I love critiquing job posts. It's one of my favorite things. Being a former hiring manager, I absolutely love diving in and ripping apart how other people write their job posts. Am I up for this? I'm always up for a job post review. Absolutely. It's like my favorite thing ever. I'm really happy I made that a Channel Point redemption. Like that's like so much fun. All right, we got a job post. Let me go pull that up. Software engineer at Notion. Oh, sweet. Okay. Before I jump into that, Keith says, "Yeah, I got a job. It's not in tech. It's a great job for me because I'm working from home. That's a huge help for me because of my disability. Anyway, I'm still studying software development with the hope that someday I'll get that first opportunity." Okay, cool. Good for you. Good for you. It is a lot of work. It is a grind, but it will pay off. It's a really tough market right now because there have been a lot of layoffs in tech. So there are a lot of engineers who are looking for jobs, especially those who are on work visas. They're in a mad scramble to try to find a job because they only have like 60 days. Otherwise, they got to leave the country. It's a really rough way to go. So there are a lot of experienced engineers on the market, and companies are more willing to hire an experienced engineer over somebody brand new. At the same time, a lot of those experienced engineers are going to be looking for salaries above what an entry level dev is going to be asking for as far as salary goes. And so some companies are going to be more willing to hire entry level roles because that's all they can afford. And that's okay too. Any job is experience. So it doesn't have to be a glamorous job. Your first job doesn't have to be your dream job. Your first job just has to be a paying job. That's kind of what I tell people. Work there for a year and a half, get that experience under your belt, and you can literally go to any other company at that point. You get a little bit of experience, and literally every other company will want to talk to you. But getting that first job in tech is the worst. It's the hardest one. I read up all kinds of stuff about that in the email newsletters. If you want to go check those out, always looking for new subscribers, and feel free to let other people know about the newsletters as well. If you forward an email newsletter to a friend and be like, "Hey, check this thing out," just keep in mind that the link at the bottom will allow them to alter your subscription, because there's a link at the bottom that's specific to your account. So don't forward the message to somebody else, but you can let them know. Just send them the link to the subscription link over here, and just say, "Hey, there's this set of newsletters that I subscribe to. I'd love any help sort of promoting that." One Dan says, "Without a CS degree, is it worth getting an unpaid internship?" I would say try really hard not to get an unpaid anything. If it's with a charitable group, you can donate your time because donating that time is a tax write-off if you're in North America. But I would not push for an unpaid internship. In some venues, it's actually illegal for them to hire you as an unpaid intern. It is experience, but you should be paid for your time. You should be paid something for your time, regardless of whether you have a degree or not. If you have the skill and they're willing to hire you, they should be paying you. They should absolutely be paying you. If you are absolutely stuck and there's literally nothing out there except unpaid work, and you can get somebody to hire you for unpaid work, then that's kind of a last resort. If you have the means to do that, like if you can, like if you've got other income or other people, that you can lean on for, rent and groceries and whatever while you do that unpaid internship for a little while, if you have that kind of privilege, then okay. But I would highly recommend don't ever do an unpaid anything unless you know that it's like charitable work. Again, charitable organizations, you can donate your time and you can use that as a tax write-off. You can write up an agreement with them and say, hey, can we agree that if I spent X number of hours, it would be worth X dollars per hour. Therefore, the work that I'm contributing to you is worth X dollars. I'm going to do it free of charge, but can we just write up this agreement that this is what I'm offering for you? Get them to sign it and be okay with that, because then it's a tax write-off for you. Hey, One Dan, thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. But yeah, I would highly recommend not doing an unpaid internship. Like I said, in some states in the United States, for example, they cannot make it unpaid. They have to pay you. There are like employment laws, specifically around internships, where they have to pay you some amount of money, even if it's minimum wage. You're still getting some amount of money out of it, or offer to do it as like a 1099 contract or something like that, where you pay your own taxes, but they should be paying you something. Yeah, try really hard not to do it for free. All right, let's jump over to this job post. I love doing these job post reviews. Let me resize this browser a little bit so it'll fit and we can still see chat and stuff. Let me pull this up here. There we go. All right, so let's dive in. So this is a software engineer for a front end role at Notion. So it's in the Bay Area. So Notion is kind of an interesting tool. I've used it a little bit. We're on a mission to make it possible for every person to be able to tailor their software to solve any problem and take on any challenge. That's about as generic as it gets from a business mission point of view. Excuse me for coughing. 86 Carrera resubscribe with Prime. Appreciate the resub. Thank you. Computers may be our most powerful tools, but most of us can't build or modify the software we use on them every day. At Notion, we want to change this with focused design and craft. We've been working on this since 2016. We have customers. Yep. Thousands more on this journey with us. Today, we're growing fast and excited for new teammates to join us who are the best at what they do. We're passionate about building a company as diverse and creative as the millions of people Notion reaches worldwide. Okay. So I like this. Sometimes when a company says like we're growing fast, sometimes that's a red flag. But Notion's been doing this for a number of years. So they've been doing it for going on 6 years, 7 years, depending on when they started in 2016. And to say that they're growing fast, like they're doing well as a company. So it doesn't concern me when they say we're growing fast and we're excited. I like that they're encouraging people who feel that they are the best at what they do. I bet as we continue to look through here, this isn't like a hard requirement. Like everybody looks to you to be the expert. I've actually seen that kind of thing in a job post. It's like people come to you for expert advice on such and such. And that's a requirement of like, people come to you for advice on Python. That's a flag. But I like that they're like, if you're proud of your accomplishments and you feel that you're really good at what you do, then come apply for the job. We're passionate about building a company as diverse and creative as the millions of people that we reach worldwide. I like this as well. They understand that their customers are diverse and they want their team to reflect their customers. I like that they've worded it this way. So far, pretty thumbs up on this so far. About this role, remember the first time you solved a problem by programming? This is such a great nostalgia hook. The delight and excitement you felt when it finally worked. Question mark. We want to deliver that experience to everyone by giving them the building blocks to create useful tools of all kinds without needing to code. So they're building like a no code, low code kind of thing. That's been the vision of computing pioneers since the 70s. Yep. Today, all the infrastructure is present, but we need your engineering to pull it off. So they're looking for you to build no code, low code kind of stuff. I'm less concerned over my camera not working at the moment, but I'll see if I can reactivate it. But if it keeps failing, I'm going to leave my camera off until I'm finished with the job post. All right, so what you will achieve. You'll work with others to build new product features from start to finish, okay? Through conception, research, implementation, and maintenance. For example, you might build an editor for inline math equations. Cool. You'll leverage your front-end knowledge to help improve performance and reliability and polish existing features. So one thing that's interesting here about front-end work and improving performance, I've worked with people in the past where I would give mock interviews to front-end people, and I'd be like, all right, go solve like a depth first search and go solve this search algorithm and that search algorithm and go do this recursion and whatever. And I actually got some criticism for it. And they're like, front end people don't get asked questions like that. I'm like, they should. They should absolutely get asked strong algorithmic questions because they're using my CPU and my RAM in my browser when I load that page. If you're writing lousy code, you're impacting my entire user experience. So you better be really good at writing performant code. So I like that they're calling that out. They want to improve the performance on things and polish existing features. For example, you might make it easier to select text across multiple paragraphs. Cool. Even if you don't know how to do this, that's okay, because part of what you're going to be doing is research. You're going to work across the stack. Well, you called it a front end role, but now you're saying you're going to work across the stack to implement the features end to end. So you're going to work with others, hopefully others across the stack. So as a front end developer, you're going to work with back end developers, but this feels a little like this could have been reworded a little bit more or a little bit better. For example, you might build a new sidebar for displaying page comments, and over the course of implementing it, you may modify an existing Node.js endpoint. No. You shouldn't be touching backend. If you're a front-end developer, you shouldn't be touching the backend. That's not your domain. So this bullet point, thumbs down. The role is for a front-end developer, but they're really looking for a full-stack developer. Then they should call this a full-stack role. They should be calling this full-stack, not front-end. Maybe like full stack leaning front end, where you can, that you're going to be working on the back end a little bit because it is a full stack role, but your primary function is going to be front end development. This bullet point it's not a giant red flag, but it's my first thumbs down on this job post so far. Skills you need to bring: thoughtful problem solving. Okay, for you, problem solving starts with a clear and accurate understanding of the context. You can decompose tricky problems and work towards a clean solution by yourself or with teammates. You're comfortable asking for help when you get stuck. There's lots of things in here that I like. They're looking for problem solvers. They're looking for people that can hear a problem, break it down into small bits, and then figure out how are we going to solve each of these bits, whether I'm going to do this bit and you do that bit, or whether we're all going to work on it together, or I can figure out how to do this whole thing. I like that they've broken this down about how you're going to break things down, and that you're comfortable asking for help when you get stuck. This is a huge communication problem at a lot of companies where people get stuck and they bang their head on their desk for hours and hours and hours when it could have been like a 5-minute phone call to get you unblocked on something. So don't be afraid to speak up. Familiarity with front end. You're familiar with the DOM, CSS, JavaScript. Oh, they didn't capitalize the S on JavaScript. And a React-like UI framework. So I would be asking them questions like, oh, do you have like your own fork of React? Or, what are they using instead of React? Based on experience and knowledge for the state of the art. Based on experience and knowledge of the state of the art in front end, you make pragmatic suggestions for how to improve our front-end tooling and abstractions. If you've experienced the technical challenges of rapid growth, that's a plus. There's a lot to unpack in here. You're familiar with this stuff. Okay, so they're looking for familiarity. They don't specifically call out expertise. They're hoping you've used something like React. So they have a React-like framework. There are variations of React. There are groups out there. I think there's one called Preact with a P that actually forked React, and it's a little bit different. So they're looking for like some amount of familiarity there. So if you know what like React components are doing and how the routing and stuff like that works, then you'll probably have a better time at this job. Based on experience and knowledge of state of the art in front end. So the wording on this is a little confusing to kind of read over. It kind of like stumbles out over time. They're basically saying you're going to make really good pragmatic suggestions on improving things based on like cutting edge kind of stuff. But cutting edge is not familiarity. So this also kind of, it's not a red flag. It's kind of orange. It's not a huge issue, but I think the wording on this could have been a little bit like addressed a little bit better, because they're looking for familiarity, but they're looking for state of the art, which means you're like cutting edge, bleeding edge. That's more than just familiarity, because to be on the cutting edge or bleeding edge of, you know, like the latest and greatest, you're going to need more than familiarity. But they're specifically calling out front-end tooling and abstractions. So again, it sounds like they're building out this low code, no code kind of thing. If you experience the technical challenges of rapid growth, that's a plus. That could be a whole separate bullet point of its own. That's not really tied in with familiarity with front-end technologies. I mean, the idea of dealing with high rapid growth, you know, is basically like you've been around companies that have built a lot of things for a lot of people that are onboarding all at the same time, and they're going to be like crushing you with feedback and so on. That's a completely different set of challenges. It's a completely different skill set. It has nothing to do with front end specifically. I think this last sentence could have been put somewhere else. Navigating ambiguity in design. You can translate high-level designs into production-ready UI, giving clear requirements. Oh, but are you giving clear requirements? Because up here, it sounds like you're going to work through the conception research to implement and maintain. But down here, you're going to be given all of the clear requirements. So ideally on a team, you're going to work out all these requirements as a team and then decide this is the direction we're going to go. Based on those requirements, you're then comfortable making judgment calls on trade-offs and edge cases. So trade-offs and edge cases, again, it's going to be a little bit more than just familiarity level. Because, for example, for an entry-level dev, if you know one way to implement something, that's the only way that you know how to implement that thing. It's that saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The only way that you can deal with trade-offs and edge cases is to have experience working on a lot of different things and know we could do it this way or this way or this way, and for reasons we're going to do it this way. You know, these are the pros and cons of this one, these are the pros and cons of this one, these are the pros and cons of this one, we're going to go this direction. You can only do that with experience. You can't really do, like, you can do it to some degree with theory, but it's not going to be as impactful as having actual experience in the thing. You don't need to see every interaction mocked out ahead of time, but you actively partner with designers to suss out the details when the requirements are unclear. So again, on this one, just a minute, let me mute here real quick. You need to see every interaction mocked out ahead of time, or you don't need to see every interaction. You actively partner with designers. So again, like somebody's like actually drawing the thing out, and then you're going to take like a Canva design and go implement the thing, you know, based on the requirements and whatever. So it sounds like they've got a pretty good process for how are we going to take this work? How are we going to plan out this work? How are we going to go design all of this stuff, come up with the requirements, and now we're going to hand it off to you to actually go figure out how to build the thing. Again, though, I think it's going to take a little bit more than familiarity level of how to implement some of this stuff. Shipping quality user experience. You elevate the quality of the product by proactively identifying user experience problems before they ship. So they're going to be looking for good testing like probably good testing practice here. They're going to want people that have had experience of like, hey, I've done this kind of thing before. This is a potential problem, potential pitfall. Again, it's going to be, you know, a little bit more than familiarity level of things. You don't just flag issues for others to solve. You communicate potential alternatives and brainstorm solutions. So this is what we do as devs. This is already looking to be more of an intermediate senior level type of role based on how they're wording this so far. You care about the business impact of what you're building. You prioritize projects accordingly. I like that the business side of it is like way down the list. I like that everything above here so far is like problem solving and technical skill, and then we care about the user. Then we care about the business. So I like the order that they put this in. I think it's good. You care about the business impact of what you're building. You prioritize accordingly. You're not just going after the cool stuff. You understand the balance between craft, speed, and the bottom line. Not everybody has that kind of experience. If you've worked at a startup, you might. But if you come from larger companies, you may not have this low level understanding of like, this is going to go solve this other thing and have this financial impact and whatever. You may not have that kind of experience. But again, when I'm writing these job posts, this is my wish list. I'm not going to find somebody who has all of this stuff. If somebody applies and they say, yes, I have experience and knowledge in all of these things, they're probably lying. They're probably exaggerating, or they've been doing it such a long time, I can't afford them. But this is still my wish list. Putting users first. So we started with like user experience and so on. And now we're back to the user. You think critically about the implications of what you're building, how it shapes real people's lives. I like this. They're looking for people with a strong user empathy. Again, dealing with a lot of front end UI, UX kind of design. I like this. You understand that reach comes with responsibility for our impact, good and bad. Cool. Okay. You're not ideological about technology. Technologies and programming languages are about trade-offs. You may be opinionated, but you're not ideological and can learn new technologies as you go. Yep. This is what we do in tech. We're constant learners. Empathetic communication. You communicate nuanced ideas clearly, whether you're explaining technical decisions in writing or brainstorming in real time. Not everybody's good at doing that in real time. Some people need a minute to process things and get back to you. In disagreements, you engage thoughtfully with other perspectives and compromise when needed. This is absolutely good teamwork kind of skill. You understand when work is better together. Yep. You enjoy collaborating cross-functionally to accomplish shared goals. So if I'm collaborating cross-functionally and this is a front-end job, then why do I need to work across the stack and like work on Node.js on the back end? If I've got a cross-functional team and we're working on this together, I shouldn't be touching the back end if this is a front end job. You care about learning, growing, helping others do the same. Yep. All right. So these are skills you'll need to bring. This is a pretty heavy list. Nice to haves. You're proficient with specific tech that's part of our stack, including TypeScript, Electron, Node, SQLite, and Postgres. Again, if you're a front end developer, you're not going to have a lot of this. You have experience debugging performance issues with UI in modern browsers across multiple platforms. Yep. But there are tools that can do some of this kind of work for you. Knowing how to tune it specifically for different kinds of platforms is helpful, but there are a lot of toolkits out there that will do that work for you. I'm thinking specifically like Sass and stuff like that, where you can write things at kind of a high level and then it'll kind of decompile down based on the browser and so on. You're familiar with some platform-specific quirks on the web and have designed solutions to navigate around them. That is a nice to have, but that's a really rare thing to have. Most people have not invented solutions. They're just implementing other people's solutions. If you have implemented some kind of solution, yeah, you're going to be highly sought after for this kind of thing. You've heard of computing pioneers, okay, like Ada Lovelace, Douglas Engelbart, Alan Kay, and others. You understand why we're big fans of their work. Okay. You have interests outside of technology, such as art, history, social science. Again, they're looking for that diversity in the people that they bring on their team. We hire talented, passionate people from a variety of backgrounds because we want our global employee base to represent the wide diversity of our customers. If you're excited about a role, but your past experience doesn't align perfectly with every bullet point listed, we still encourage you to apply. That's cool. If you're a builder at heart, they're not calling you an engineer. They're not calling you a developer. They're calling you a builder. If you're a builder, if you share our company values, and you're enthusiastic about making software tool making ubiquitous, we want to hear from you. Notion is proud to be equal opportunity. We don't discriminate. Yep, that's all legalese that they kind of have to put in there. We consider qualified applicants with criminal histories. All right, consistent with applicable federal, state, local law. We're all committed to providing reasonable accommodations for qualified individuals with disabilities, disabled veterans on our job app procedures. If you need assistance or accommodation, please let your recruiter know. I like that they call this stuff out. Overall, how do I feel about this? Okay, well, let's continue through this. First name, last name, email, phone number, resume. The resume is required. The cover letter is not. I like that they don't force you to write a cover letter. The cover letter is really the creative writing version of give me context about your resume. If you have the time to write a cover letter, I encourage you to. If they give you the opportunity to upload one, somebody's going to read it. If they absolutely don't care about a cover letter, they wouldn't even give you the opportunity to attach it. So somebody's going to read that cover letter if you write it. So I would highly encourage anybody applying for that job, write a cover letter for it. They're asking for pronouns. Starting in August, employees across the globe will work and collaborate in. Employees across the globe will work and collaborate together in our offices for 2 anchor days each week. The other 3 days are meant to be flexible. The offices will be open and everyone's encouraged to come in. You can also work from home as well. We consider requests for accommodation to this policy. When requested, Notion will provide a reasonable accommodation for physical or mental disabilities or other reasons recognized by applicable law. Please confirm that you understand our return to office policy. So it sounds like they want you to be in a location where they have an office. They're going to expect that you're going to relocate. If you want to work 100% remote, you're going to have to give them a pretty good reason why you deserve to work remotely from the sounds of this. Will you now or in the future require sponsor immigration, etc.? They're not disqualifying you if you need a visa. So that's good. They're asking for LinkedIn, website. How'd you hear about it? Why do you want to work at Notion? It's kind of the cover letter, but they're asking for it here, but it's not a required field. So would you copy and paste the cover letter in here and not upload the cover letter? Would you put bits and pieces of the cover letter in here? I don't know. Portfolio password, this would be optional if you have a portfolio, if it's password protected. Voluntary self-ID. Cool. Do you have the disability? How do you know if you have a disability? Cool. We did have someone ask in the stream one time, it's like, how do people actually use this? Do HR people actually get to see what you choose as part of a disability, as part of your application? The feedback that I got from HR people is no, they don't get to see this. But as a company, they do have to report back to the government, 3% of our applicants claim to have some kind of disability of this type or that type, or so many people identified as a disabled veteran, that sort of thing. Thank you for the hydrate. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this job post. A couple of things that I've kind of already talked about. They call it a front end job. There is a lot of things in here about the skills you need to bring that really do sound like a front end developer. They're expecting you to work on the DOM. They're expecting strong UI, UX. They're expecting some amount of like testing. They don't want to ship buggy code, so they want you to find things in development before it goes into like QA and production. They want you to be flexible. They want you to be a learner. They want you to be empathetic to users, put users first, quality user experience. Like they put a lot of empathy on, we want our users to be taken care of. That's really strong for front end. What I don't like about it is this bullet point right here. They expect that you're going to work across the stack, that you have some amount of back-end knowledge as well, but they're calling this a front-end role. Is it okay to expect a little bit of back-end? I don't think it's going to disqualify you because they do specifically call out down here, if you don't align perfectly with every bullet point, please apply anyway. Like they're encouraging you, apply anyway. So if you don't have backend, if you don't have Node, Express, and so on that they mention in here, um, like Node, SQLite, Postgres, if you don't have that experience, they want you to apply anyway. If you are just a front end developer, you've never done anything on the back end, I would say go ahead and apply for this job. Overall, I would give this I'd give it a B plus. I wouldn't go into the A territory because there were a couple of things that we kind of called out. But yeah, I would say a strong B plus on the job post. Cool. Thanks, Roboso. Thanks for sending that over. I love doing the job post critiques. All right, what else we got going on? Lego Logic says working with JavaScript employers kind of expect you to know front end and back end. They might expect it, but do you have to? Is the question. Like they're going to put that in the job post. Like we hope that you have all of these skills, but it's not going to be an absolute requirement. If it's an absolute requirement, then when you have that first phone call with the recruiter, you can say like, hey, there's a lot of back end middleware kind of level stuff in here. Is this really a full stack role? Like, should this have been labeled a full stack role? Because, half of the bullet points or a third of the bullet points are about back end. In this case, they only had one bullet point that really called out back end kind of stuff, and another one kind of hinted a little bit like you could work alone on this whole thing front to back. So I think there is some really strong hope that you're going to have some back end, but they do specifically call out like if you don't have all these bullet points, we want you to apply anyway. And I think that shows a lot of maturity from a company that they have a strong sort of opinion. Like they also want you to be opinionated, but they want some flexibility. They're also showing that in the job post. They have some opinions, but they're also offering flexibility in there as well. So I'm kind of getting out of that what they want in their company culture is also reflected in that job post. From a diversity point of view, from a flexibility point of view, from constant learning, like they want you to learn, they want you to grow, they want you to share that knowledge around the team, they want you to communicate and collaborate well. So I think that there's a lot of their company culture that really kind of exudes from that job post. Overall, I quite like the job post. I would say if you're front end and not full stack, I think you could apply for that job. If you are full stack, leaning more on the back end, you might have a harder time because there is a lot of like front end design and UI UX kind of stuff. But I would say apply for the job anyway. But if you are front end kind of leaning full stack, then yeah, I think it would be a good fit overall. Kisu says, I consider myself front end, but I know studying Node because I see a lot of front end jobs posting that require Node. You're now studying Node. I got you. Hey, C Films, good to see you. I mean, yeah, again, do companies expect you to have Node.js? They want you to have Node.js. If they put it as a requirement, like you have to know Node as well as front end UI UX, then it is a full stack job. If it is a hard requirement that you must have Node experience, then it's really a full stack job. And you can clarify that with the recruiter when you apply. Or in the little box where it says like, why do you want to apply for this job? You can say, I'm a front end dev. There's some points on the job post that excite me about things that I'm going to get to learn. I'm going to get to, explore parts of Node.js that maybe I haven't looked at before. Or I've only looked a little bit at Node.js and I see that there's going to be opportunity for that. So I'm excited to bring the skills that I have, but I'm also excited that I'm going to be able to grow in this role as well. Like companies want to see that ambition as well. So I think calling that kind of stuff out, whether it's in the cover letter or in the little block about like, why do you want to apply here? I think you could call those kinds of things out and say, I'm going to get to bring my knowledge and bring my experience, but I'm also going to get to learn and grow on the job. I think that those are all good points. Tools like T3 Stack make it doable and fun. Yeah, T3 Stack is pretty good. I've looked at that over the last couple of weeks. It's pretty interesting how people are doing like a lot more toolkits and scaffolding and things like that around kind of bringing the whole stack together, where you're doing a lot of things in TypeScript, or doing a lot of interesting sort of blends of technologies as well. So, I think the latest Rails 7, I think there's like a hook in Rails 7 now where you can say like, make the front end a React app while I build the back end as an API, and they just like the two parts know how to communicate because it's kind of out of the box. Those kinds of things that are making it easier and easier to get into like building out full stack applications where you can still see a separation of like this is the front end and this is the back end, as opposed to the old style like Rails app or PHP style apps where you're kind of blending the back end and the front end code together. I like that these other toolkits and frameworks are keeping those things more separated, but still allowing you as a dev to kind of blend across all of the work and sort of make that easier. We're going back to PHP. No, PHP is not a bad language. It's gotten much, much better. Like I hated PHP 4 and 5. Like I started working in PHP in version 3. Version 4 made some improvements, but also took a lot of steps backwards. 5, they were just trying to shoehorn a bunch of stuff in. They tried even worse with PHP 6, which is why they abandoned 6 completely and just jumped right to 7. And I think they're up to PHP 8 now. And the little bit that I dabbled in PHP 7, gosh, that was several years ago. Dabbling in PHP 7, I'm like, okay, they fixed some stuff. This is actually a pretty decent language now. Doesn't mean I want to jump back into it because I think mentally I'm still like, oh, PHP. Because I wrote PHP for 10, 15 years. Like I wrote it for a long time. So it's one thing to like tinker with a language and go, I'm opinionated. I don't like this after all. It's another thing to have worked in a technology for a decade and have reasons why you didn't like something, and why you want to stay away from a particular technology. But I like PHP now. PHP is a much better language now than it was in the past, for sure. Yeah, I started on PHP back in 1998, and I think I last wrote PHP in, was it SendGrid? I want to say 2012. We were working on the Symfony framework, and then later on, I got a job at a startup here in Boulder, Colorado, in 2016, and I did a little bit of PHP 5, and it drove me bonkers. I had to step away from it at that point. I'm like, I had all this weird, like, I don't want to call it PTSD because I think that's trivializing, people that actually have PTSD. But it was triggering in a lot of ways around like, PHP 5 all over again, like dealing with poor choices of how they named their functions and how they structured things and how they were trying to make the language object oriented, and it was just failing on a lot of places. That I'm like, no, I can't do PHP anymore. And so at that point, I started taking off the history of LinkedIn, started taking it off my resume. Like, I think in very rare cases, I'll put PHP on my resume, but usually I just leave it off. Most companies now that they look at resumes, they really only care what you've been doing all the last 5 to 10 years anyway. So if like even for me and folks like 86 Career, they've been in the industry a long time. They don't care about how we did things 20 years ago, 24, 25, 26 years ago. They don't care because we don't do it that way anymore. We don't use those languages anymore. So why put that on a resume? They don't care about it. It's not as impressive to say like, oh yeah, I've worked in 20 programming languages over my career. It's like nobody cares. It's like they only care about the 1 or 2 programming languages they're using today. They don't care about all this other experience. Like it's not as important to them. So you don't have to put that kind of stuff on a resume. It's not helpful. It's clutter, if anything. You need to show very succinctly on a resume that you have the skill that they're looking for. So you don't want to clutter that up if you can help it. Alrighty. Well, we've been going for about 2 hours. If anybody else has questions, stuff like that, thoughts on ChatGPT? Yeah, I got thoughts. But yeah, if you've got other questions or other stuff you want to chat about, I'm happy to kind of nerd out on things. Yeah, ChatGPT looks pretty sweet. And Hiker56, thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Looks my blinky light thing isn't working. We had a power outage like a week ago, and it like reset all of my canvas panels. I just got them working like Tuesday, but I've got to go back and like refresh all the API keys so that the blinky lights will happen. I've got a thing on my Stream Deck that I can hit that calls a Python script to go make the things blink, but I have to go back and like update the API keys and stuff. So I will get that fixed at some point, probably for Sunday. ChatGPT is really interesting from an AI point of view, but there are problems with those AI tools in where they're getting their source material to learn from, and where they're doing the modeling. Um, I was tinkering with Midjourney, the AI, like the image AI thing. And what's interesting is they had a feature in there where you could provide your own source material and you could train it off of that. There was a there was a thing that I saw on Twitter, gosh, month and a half ago. I mean, it's still out there, it's still running. I think it was called like avatarme.ai or something like that, where you upload a bunch of photos. You upload like 10 photos of your face, like looking in different angles and up and down, and and then they want like from your head to your torso, and then like whole body pictures. And then they would use AI with those as source images to train the AI to then come up with, a bunch of like sourced photos to come up with profile images for you. And it was interesting. I actually showed some of the ones that it generated for me. It was like $30 or something, and it generated a bunch. And I actually complained to them about some of them because they had like pictures of guns. Like there was one picture that didn't even have any like a human being in it. It was just a picture of a gun. I'm like, why? Like, why are there guns in here? Like, can I regenerate these without any guns? And so they didn't refund the $30, but they offered to let me upload photos and try it again. Um, but I never got around to it because I'm just gonna give them the same photos anyway. But there was another one that I saw on Twitter over the last couple of days, and Roselle Scarlett, who's been on the stream, she's a DevRel at GitHub. Fantastic, absolutely really great young lady. She streams here on Twitch as well. Um, and you can go find her on Twitter's Black Code Bytes, I think is her Twitter username. But she was talking about this AI generator and how it wasn't working for Black people. It didn't detect skin tones and whatever. And we see that in AI, where people that build AI are, they're going to look like me. They're white dudes probably. And so they're going to train their models on white faces. And so, yeah, of course, it's going to come up with, images that look like me because it's going to recognize my facial features and where the edges of my face are and whatever based on skin tone. But for people with darker complexions and dark melatonin and Black people and just, people from around the world, all different skin tones, it wasn't working for them. And Roselle actually posted some of the pictures that it generated for her where it's very clearly like a light skinned person. And she's like, what the heck? Like, what kind of source material you're using for this? When I was playing around with Midjourney, it could go out and it could generate whatever based on all these trained models that you download. They're like several gigabytes in size, where you download like this 4 GB or 7 GB library, and then it unpacks and uncompresses. And it's got all this trained material to then go generate, go picture Superman flying over the city or whatever. And it knows how to go find little bits and pieces of Superman and bits and pieces of a city, and it generates this really great looking AI art. But there was also an option in Midjourney at one point where you could say, like, don't use any pre-sourced material, use this directory of photos. And I think that that's what this Avatar Me group was doing, is they were taking your photos, putting it in a folder, and then telling Midjourney or whatever to say, like, go use those photos as, how to detect a human face in order to go then regenerate these avatar images. But when we think about tools like ChatGPT and tools like even GitHub Copilot, they have to learn that material from somewhere. They have to go find those code snippets from somewhere. The AI is not generating that stuff on its own. It's learning models based on keywords. So when you say like, hey, go write me a tutorial on how to connect PHP to Postgres, it's going to be like, okay, what have I learned about PHP? Let me go look at some training material on, what I've learned about the PHP language. Let me go look up what I've learned about Postgres. Let me put all that together and write up something that looks like a tutorial. What have I been trained on as far as seeing other tutorials that I can go write my own tutorial? And it's basically just copying and pasting all of the bits and pieces of what it's learned, the same way it would put a piece of art together. It doesn't know what Superman is. It doesn't know how to draw Superman, but it has seen other pictures of something that somebody told it was Superman. And so if you say, go draw me a picture of Superman flying over a city skyline, it knows what a city skyline is. It knows what the keyword skyline means. It means buildings, and there's going to be sky, right? It's going to see the word sky, and it's going to, whatever. And it's going to have seen pictures of Superman, and it's going to figure out how to put all of those pieces together. And so is ChatGPT. When you say, go write me a block of text about some kind of content, it has to go learn that from somewhere and then try to put things together in grammatically correct sentences and all kind of stuff. But it's generating that content from somewhere else. And the other thing that I saw on Twitter over the last day or two, and I forget if it was Rizal that actually called this out on Twitter, but they were looking at these AI generators for the artwork again, where it was actually grabbing artwork with partial artist signatures and actually using those little bits and pieces in the final generated art, which means it's retaining that content to reuse. And now you think that it's generated this thing just for you and you own the copyright on it and you can share it with whatever, but it's actually used bits and pieces and clips of information from other sources. And it's the same thing with Google Copilot. I think there's actually a lawsuit against Microsoft right now for Google Copilot because they're going through and they're scraping all of these open source projects. And they're like, well, it's open source. You know, anybody could go scrape that and look at that content. But they're scraping all of that content in order to use AI to go train things to actually help other people go write other code. But it might be doing that by, you know, when I write out a comment and I hit enter and it, you know, writes 20 or 30 lines of code, it's not actually writing that code. It's copying bits and pieces of that code from somewhere else. And where is that somewhere else? Who owns that other code? What license is that other code under? Because that might not be compatible with a license that my company needs to use or that I'm agreeing with as a personal developer. You know, if they're pulling in, say, LGPL and I don't agree with that license, I'm not saying I don't, but just pulling that out as an example, that, you know, now I'm generating code that I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go use this code. And I don't realize that some of it was borrowed from projects that maybe I don't care about or projects that I actually would not want to support and copy code from. But I don't know where that code's coming from. I have no visibility into where Copilot actually gets those bits of code. And it's the same thing with ChatGPT. Where is it getting the source material? Who's training it on that source material? And what bias have the developers built into the training profiles the same way that these image AI tools don't recognize Black people? And it's the same thing, like we saw it on like phone cameras for years. Google made huge advances, you know, over I think it was the Pixel 6, I think came out with the, you know, one of the better cameras that would start detecting dark skin tones, where up until then, like they had a lot of problems detecting Black people in photos. I've even seen people like the little hand dryers in bathrooms don't detect Black people's hands because the light reflects better off of light complexion skin, and the light reflecting off onto the sensor just reads better from a white person. And so a white person has no problem drying their hands. Black person, they're not going to be able to dry their hands. So it's who's building the tools. And so I think no matter who's building the AI, no matter how intelligent it may seem, there's still inherent bias in how these things get built and how the tools actually get built. Who's actually building them? Those are things that we need to take a look at as part of our. So I'm dropping a bunch of frames. Those are things that we need to look at when it comes to the ethics of what we're building. Sorry, my internet might be dropping here, so we'll give it a minute to try to recover. All right, I think I'm back. Am I back? There we go. I think I'm back. Maybe. No, it's my internet. It's not you, it's me. Hopefully it's back. I've got green lights on OBS again, so let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if it's still coming through okay. Let me know in chat if you can hear me and see me and all kind of stuff. I think it's okay now. Let me reload just to be sure. Audio's good. Okay. Cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Weird hiccup. Not sure what's going on. So yeah, that would be those are my thoughts about ChatGPT. I think it's really neat to see what developers are building. I think it's really neat that people are focusing on those kinds of tools to help generate ideas and things like that. But where are those ideas coming from? Where are the training models coming from? Who's writing the tools that are doing the training models? Those are all the interesting things that we need to take a look at of who's building the tools that then trains the models, and then who's building the math and whatever of those training models to then apply to go generate other things. But we can see from these visual art tools that they're actually grabbing fragments of artwork from people who are like signing their artwork, and we're seeing partial signatures showing up in the auto, the AI generated artwork. So it's not purely drawing these things on its own. It's copying what it knows, and it's showing you fragments of what it has already seen from somewhere else. And we're seeing the same thing from ChatGPT and OpenAI and like all these other tools that all these things are based on. Is it's looking at the training material and saying, okay, based on the training material and this prompt, what can I go look at, or what can I go scrape, to go do the thing. I saw a headline of like ChatGPT is going to kill Google and kill Stack Overflow. It's like, no, those are like the primary sources where it's finding its training material. It's not going to kill Stack Overflow. It's going to need Stack Overflow to keep working. And then Stack Overflow, I guess, banned ChatGPT. I don't know how they're going to ban it unless they're like figuring out, how that tool is going through and scraping content for its learning material. Um, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how it plays out over time. Those are my initial thoughts. I haven't actually played with the tool myself, but I've seen other people playing with it, and it's impressive. It's impressive to watch. And like not being good at math, I know that there's math involved, but not being good at math, I look at that kind of stuff and it's magic to me. It's like, wow, I have no idea how somebody would even build a tool like that. But it's impressive that the tools like that are being built, and that they're doing such a good job generating content based on what it's been trained to learn. But how is that training happening? Where is the content? Do they actually have permission to use that content or use fragments of that content in the context for which people are actually using this stuff for? I think those are important things that we need to consider before just widely using these kinds of tools. Like there are probably companies out there that say like, hey, we cannot, absolutely do not ever, ever, ever use Google Copilot. As a developer, like I wouldn't use Google Copilot to actually put something in production. But what I might do with Copilot is say, okay, I have a problem to solve. I'm not sure how I want to solve it. So I'm just going to throw the prompt at Google Copilot in VS Code, but I'm actually going to go write my code in some other editor. But I'm going to use VS Code and I'm going to use Copilot just to give me an idea of like, how could I approach this? I'm going to look through that, maybe develop some pseudocode off of that, and then I'm actually going to go write the code myself. So I think you can use it for ideas, but you absolutely don't want to use a tool like Copilot or ChatGPT to actually build like production code, because you don't know where that code's coming from. And again, you could end up with legal problems about, if you copy code from a particular software license that requires, like, if you use any portion of this code, you also have to release all of your source code as open source. You don't want to put your company in that position. And so where are you getting that actual generated material from? You have no visibility into where it's coming from. So you shouldn't use it. Otherwise, I think you can end up in big problems. RC says there's a sizable lawsuit against it. Yeah, I heard that. If Copilot wins, then all these things we see now will continue. If not, and there's a good chance, then expect a bunch of lawsuits and others will end up getting many of the AI tools, getting banned or pulled. Yeah, again, because where's that content coming from? And how is it being used? And I think that there's a licensing and a copyright kind of issue about like, you're generating that, but now do I have to go build a list of contributors and say that the people that contributed all these little snippets of the code that it auto-generated, do I need to now go add all those people as contributors? Like that might be an outcome of that lawsuit, is that if Google Copilot generates code for you, they have to provide a list of contributors of where they got the original source material. That could be an outcome. And that's going to like really mess things up too. So I saw someone explain this concept to me like a 10-year-old and I got confused Yeah. And yeah, I mean like I said, the math behind it is mind-boggling and it's really neat to see. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the near term and the long term. I think it's going to be interesting to see like what's this lawsuit going to have as far as like overall widespread impact and so on, and kind of go from there. Cool. Well, I appreciate everybody hanging out. Lots of good questions, lots of good content, as always. But yeah, my voice is starting to wear down a little bit. So I think I'm gonna prep to find somebody to go raid. One of the things that I want to build is a raid target tool where I can take all the people that I follow and all the people that you see over in the rotation thing over here from time to time and figure out like all these people that Ian follows and Ian suggests that you go follow. Are any of those people streaming right now? And then keeping track of like who have I rated into since, last, like I see Chrissy Codes is streaming right now. It's like, have we ever, when was the last time we rated into Chrissy's channel kind of thing, and go find people to rate into. I think it would be an interesting thing to kind of build out. Let's see, ODAT Nerd is working on some stuff. Topological sorting. Dadcraft is doing some Minecraft. Major League Hacking is doing machine learning. So we just had a big chat about machine learning. We could go right into MLH. Let's see. Anthropomorphic dumpster fire preps for chill vibes gaming. Maybe. I've got some leak code. Actually, I think this is a channel I don't think we've ever raided into. I like finding new people to go raid into, so we're gonna go raid over there. Let me go back over to that view, and we're gonna set up the raid. Cool. So we're gonna go raid over. Could I address this comment from chat? Oh yeah, sorry I missed it. RC says, I'm glad I did an AI ML class in college. I have at least some level of understanding. Yeah, I have no understanding other than I know it's like reading over data and it's like making little fragments of sort of knowledge of how it's tying the things together. And so when you ask it to do something, it's really just saying, okay, well, I learned this and I learned this and I can put those things together and do this. I could probably come up with like a food recipe kind of analogy, but Kisu said, can you address this comment from chat? I think I know I have a lot of learning to do before applying to jobs. Would you recommend guiding that learning based on job posts or learn separately and look for job posts that fit? Ooh, that's a great question. I would probably start with the job posts to see what are people looking for, because to just go build projects, you don't even know if you're going to be building the things that people even want. And so now you're building up a skill set that isn't even in demand. So I think using job posts to guide what kind of projects you should be building, I think would be a good way to get started. So look at job posts, look at the technologies, look at the things that they want you to know, and then figure out, okay, 80% of the job posts that I'm looking at that sound interesting, or companies that sound interesting, they're looking for this skill and this skill, and they're looking for experience in this and that. Use that then to shape, I want to go build a project that looks like this or that. Or as you're networking and reaching out to people from those companies, just say, hey, I noticed on the job post you're looking for this and that. If I were to build a project that had this aspect and this feature and whatever, would that stand out as a candidate? And get their take on it. That's where you can kind of blend the job post and the networking in order to look like a good candidate. If you're going to take the time to build a project, you should do it with intention, and don't just like it's okay to build things that are interesting to you that you can be passionate about. But I think it's important that you're actually building skills for what companies actually want to hire. Like if you spend all your time on authentication systems and nobody's hiring for authentication systems, and why did you just spend all that time building auth? But if they're looking for, a particular language, particular skill, particular set of skills, and I got Liam Neeson in my head every time I say that. if they're looking for particular technologies, if they're looking for a particular way of applying those technologies and building out particular kinds of features, those are the kinds of things that you want to build into your project, because that's going to stand out on your resume. If you specifically call out, I built this project in mind because I know that your company is building out these kinds of systems. I wanted to build a project like that to show I have the know-how, I have the understanding, I've got the experience building this exact thing that you're doing. You're going to look like a much better candidate for that job. So I would start with the job post to shape what you should be building, and not the other way around. Because if you just build what's interesting to you and then have to go look for a job based on those skills, you're probably going to have a much more limited set of jobs that you can apply for. It'll be a very niche, very small focused type of job that you're going to apply for. Where if you base your experience on what people are actually looking to hire, then you'll actually have more marketable skills and you'll be able to apply for a wider variety of jobs. Because again, when it comes to jobs, like networking is going to get you that job faster, but it's also still a numbers game where you're going to have to apply to a lot of jobs, go through a lot of interviews in order to get the job offer. So why not do that with the skills the companies actually want to hire for? I think that would be a wiser way to go. I appreciate the question. I'm sorry that I missed it earlier. I think that it was a fantastic question to ask for sure. So thanks for asking, and thank you as well, Kisu, for calling that out and say, hey, you missed that in chat. Appreciate that. Anytime you see a question go by that I miss, please like repost it or say, hey, Ian, like so and so asked a question. I'll go back through chat and try to find it. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Cool. Well, we're going to go right over to Madeline of Rivia. We haven't raided over to their channel that I recall. I don't think we've raided over there. But make some noise when we're over there. Make friendly noise. And we'll see you over there. I am going to stream on Sunday. I will not be streaming next Thursday. I'm giving a talk here in Denver. So I won't be streaming next Thursday, but I will stream on Sunday. I'll see y'all then. If you do want to send in a resume, please send them in. And I'll do some resume reviews on Sunday if I get some resumes in. Otherwise, we'll see you over in Madeline's channel. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe, stay warm if you're cool. Stay cool if you're warm. And we'll catch you on Sunday. Cheers.